I've had training. The training is nothing. The will is everything.
Ra's al Ghul, the trainer and mentor come nemesis for the Dark Knight. I'm Andrew Lapamardo, your narrator, and this is Marvelous Videos. There is no dearth of Batman villains, but few of them are as famous as Ra's al Ghul. Ra's is an immortal and has been dubbed as Batman's true nemesis over the course of his many years as a Batman villain.
But is Ra's al Ghul immortal?
Dennis O'Neil and Neal Adams created this complex and memorable character in the year 1971, and since then, he has been part and parcel of the Gotham crime scene.
Between you and the people of Gotham,
No one can save Gotham.
While we know him to be a deadly villain, this video will dive deep into the origin story of Ra's al Ghul to give you a perspective about his early life and time, and all the various events that led up to him becoming an accomplished and feared adversary.
Years, we sacked Rome, loaded trade ships with plague rats, burned London to the ground.
What is most interesting is that Ra's is nothing like any other DC villain we have seen over the decades. He is special and different. And there is a much larger story at play leading up to him becoming an assassin. Want to know more? Keep watching. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The first comic book appearance and origins explored. This villain debuted in the 1971 comic book titled Daughter of the Demon. In this book, we are first introduced to a villain who is now an integral part of the Batman mythos. As the comic begins, we see Robin returning home after a night of adventure. However, he is ambushed by two shooters using tranquilizer darts. They capture the boy Wonder after shooting him and taking him away. Bruce Wayne then receives a picture of his kidnapped buddy and a mission to find him hours after the kidnapping. He returns to the Batcave to continue his investigation, but as he enters, he is greeted by a man named Ra's al Ghul and his servant Ubu. Ra's contacts have concluded that Bruce Wayne and Batman were the same people, so he came to enlist the services of whom he considered the world's greatest detective to locate his daughter Talia, who had been kidnapped as well. Suspecting a link between Talia's kidnapping and Robin, Batman offers to help Ra's. Their journey takes them all the way to Calcutta, where they discover evidence linking the kidnappers to the Brotherhood of the Demon, a cult. When Batman questions a local gangster about the Brotherhood's whereabouts, he is sent to a building in the Alley of Widows. A positioned leopard leaps out and attacks Batman as he enters the building. Batman snaps the animal's neck after catching its jaw with his elbow. After the threat has passed, Batman discovers a map that leads them to the Himalaya Mountains. Ra's al Ghul funds a mountain climbing expedition, and the three set off to scale the icy peaks. During this, a sniper opens fire on them, and one of the rounds appears to hit Ra's head. While Batman skillfully evades consecutive gunshots, Ubu pulls him inside a crevasse. As he climbs the hill, he discovers a Brotherhood temple. He enters the temple and discovers Robin imprisoned by rope and guarded by armed guards. As soon as Batman frees Robin, the shooters close in on him. When Batman turns around, he reveals that he is not deceived by this clever trick. When the Brotherhood's masked leader approaches him, Batman takes off his mask and exposes the face of Raz's servant, Ubu. Thus, Raz was the actual culprit of the crime and Batman had known all along. Ubu and Batman battle it out, but Batman's speed and ability prove too much for Ubu. Ra's and his daughter Talia finally enter the room. He admits that he staged the entire affair to determine if Batman would be a worthy successor to Ra's as the Brotherhood's leader. He also admits that Talia is in love with Batman, and Ra's is looking for guarantees that the Dark Knight would make a good son-in-law. So, while this comic is his first appearance and shows us the brilliant yet devious mind of Ra's, his actual origins are told in the comic titled Birth of the Demon. The comic uses a flashback to the Middle Ages to tell the story of Ra's al Ghul between the Black Pest and the Crusades. Somewhere in the desert, we encounter a young Ra's al Ghul, who is known only as the Physician there. Ra's was born into a nomadic tribe, but his passion for science and healing drove him to settle down in the city, where he married a beautiful young girl named Sora. Raish was close to the Sultan Salam, which was sometimes a bad thing, because the Prince Runsi could lay hands on Sora at any time. Raish witnessed one of these occurrences when the prince won a horse race by stamping on an elderly woman. Raish pays a visit to the elderly woman's son, risking being killed by him in retribution for his mother's terrible condition. Huey, her son, believes they were all complicit in what transpired during the race. When Raish realizes the woman is going to die, he provides Huey with some powders to make a soup that will make her death as painless as possible. They are disturbed by the guards, who summon the physician to the palace because the prince has contracted the Black Pest. If Raish succeeds in saving his life, the Sultan promises him anything. Raish then returns to the desert, where he was born, and falls asleep in a dream, believing that the soil under him possesses enormous power. Raish gets a vision of himself fighting death, portrayed by a bat, and tumbling into a pit that will bring him back to life in this dream. He tells the Sultan that he has a plan to save the prince's life after waking up from his epiphanous dream. He then orders them to construct a trench and pour the chemicals required. The prince is placed in the pit after making sure everything is in place. But things go tragically wrong. In a fit of rage, the prince resurrects and assaults Sora, strangling her. The Sultan forces Runsi to enter his own thoughts, but Sora is no longer alive. The Sultan orders the guards to arrest the physician for the murder of his own wife, seeing that if he didn't work quickly, his son would be implicated in the crime. When Raish is ultimately brought before the charges in the palace, the Sultan somewhat admits between the lines that he knows he didn't kill her, but publicizing the alternative would be awful. In a cruel twist of fate, Prince Runsi, who was the perpetrator of the crime, cruelly sentences Raish to be imprisoned with his wife's dead body. They also detained an entire clan of nomads. All of them were trapped in a sandhole, victim to hunger, thirst, and rats. After a few days, Huey arrives to save Raish, who has managed to stay alive this long. They then call Raish's uncle, the nomad tribe's chief, and devise a plan to exact vengeance on the Sultan. Raish brings the prince a beautiful but deadly silk that he found in a mass grave of merchants who were victims of the Black Pest. Of course, the prince becomes ill, prompting a new quest for a physician. He then instructs them to dig a fresh pit in a new site. He is aware, however, that there is no power line behind this pit. When the prince emerges from the pit, he appears to be dying. After that, the nomad tribe assaults, killing everyone but the Sultan. Raish straps him to a horse and abandons him in the desert, but a flash of mercy strikes him at the last moment and he kills him. Following that, the tribe invades the city and massacres it. Raish, on the other hand, is unsatisfied with his vengeance. Instead, he feels manipulated by his ruthless adversary. And now, he's infected with the Black Pest as well. They return Raish's body to the original pit, where he resurrects in a fit of rage but manages to calm down. As a final act of revenge, he orders the tribe to destroy any history, records, or other evidence that could lead to the discovery of such a society. While the story's plot is rather obvious, O'Neil does an excellent job of establishing Raish as a great Batman antagonist. We learn that Raish was a scientist and a healer in a prior life, similar to Bruce's father Thomas. Despite his opposition to the present, Raish attempts to co-opt him as his heir to his huge criminal empire. It's easy to envision Bruce joyfully taking on the younger Raish like a father figure. He didn't want anything from his people to survive. Talia opines as she nears the end of the story. Not even a single word from their language. He claimed it was part of his vengeance. There was another motive, she believes. Because of his grief, he didn't want any reminders of his deceased wife. Raish regards the emotional connection as a flaw. Raish rationalizes his decision to try to hide his own memories as a means of avoiding diluting his fury and rage. Remembering the happiness and joy, he believes, would weaken his determination and betray his wife. Raish's genocidal rage, according to O'Neil, is founded in the most devastating of losses. Because they reminded him of something. He eliminated an entire civilization from the face of the planet. Raish then proclaimed himself the Demon's Head, after defacing Baisu's altar. He spent the following few millennia traveling all over the globe. Raish, his uncle, and Huey all used the Lazarus Pit to extend their lives until an occurrence in London. Huey had been caught writing his own memoir in their native tongue, which Raish had outlawed all records of. Raish murdered the boy during a skirmish and fled to a Lazarus Pit. His uncle had disappeared with the fragments of their history document by the time he had returned return to their London house. He became a master of several types of warfare, including fencing over time. In addition, he amassed immense money and founded the Demon, a big multinational organization named after his personal pseudonym, the Demon's Head. Various factions exist inside this organization, the most infamous of which being the League of Assassins, also known as the Demon's Fang or Demon Fang. Ra's arrived upon the Infinity Island in the Indian Ocean during his travels throughout the world, and uncovered a unique Lazarus pit at the island's center. Ra's stormed the island with his army of warriors and enslaved the locals, converting them to slaves and acquiring resources to extend his empire. Ra's kept the island a secret for ages, keeping the world in the dark about it and continuing to extend his lifespan. Years later, during World War II, Ra's employed his organization to battle the Axis powers in order to bring the war to an end. A close soldier died as a result of these efforts, causing Ra's to raise the man's son as his own. Following his parents' death, Quinlan, a teenager, had a bad attitude, which irritated Ra's wife, Melisandre. Quinlan eventually found Ra's Lazarus pit, but Melisandre grabbed him before he could go any further. The young man ran away, but not before pushing Melisandre into the pit and killing her. Tragedy struck once again as he lost his wife one more time, along with his surrogate son. The son took on the name of Cain and became an international terrorist. Ra's learned that the Infinity Island had been purchased by some Bruce Wayne in recent years, and he went out to kill him and take over his corporate empire. Ra's discovered the best hidden secret in Gotham City at that time: who really was Batman. And thus, the saga of Ra's al Ghul as a Batman villain began.
Every time a civilization reaches the pinnacle of its decadence, we return to restore the balance.
A fascinating version of Ra's al Ghul in the Nolanverse. Being a character that is complicated, timeless, and deeply intertwined with Batman, it is obvious that Ra's al Ghul would make it to the live-action realm of DC movies. Ra's al Ghul, posing as Henry Deckard, was Bruce Wayne's tutor and trainer, and he recruited him into the League of Shadows to obliterate Gotham City over the course of his various appearances in the Nolanverse. Bruce rejected the organization, dismantled his Gotham Underworld associates, and stopped Ra's in his tracks. Talia, Bruce's later potential love interest and antagonist, is the daughter of Ra's. In Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises, he was played by Liam Neeson as an elderly man, and in The Dark Knight Rises, he was played by Josh Pence in Ra's depiction as a young man. His origin story in the Nolanverse is quite different from what it is in the comics. Ra's al Ghul was a competent mercenary who worked for a strong warlord in his youth. He was smitten by the warlord's daughter. They married in secret after she had a child with him. The warlord had the mercenary sentenced to the pit, but instead banished him out of a sense of dishonor. To save face, the warlord had his daughter take her husband's place in the prison. The mercenary then decided to join the League of Shadows, where he quickly advanced through the ranks. Ra's wife gave birth to a daughter called Talia in the pit, and she spent her early years imprisoned with her mother. The jail doctor neglected to lock the door to her cell one day, and the other inmates were able to escape, and they attacked and murdered Ra's wife. Talia eventually fled the prison with the help of a prisoner known as Bane, despite the fact that Bane was beaten to death while defending her. Talia tracked down her father and returned him to the pit to extract revenge. He saved Bane, who had become mutilated there. Talia and Bane were taught by the League of Shadows, but Ra's exiled Bane due to his continual reminder of his wife's death. It was for that reason that Talia harbored grudges against her father till his death. Even the way he first met Wayne differs significantly from the comics. Ra's al Ghul tracked down Bruce Wayne in a Bhutanese prison, where he introduced himself as Henry Deckard, a Ra's al Ghul colleague, and offered him a road. After being set free, Bruce climbed to the League of Shadows monastery, where Deckard, Ra's, and a band of mercenaries awaited him. Soon, Deckard became Wayne's mentor and taught him various combat skills and martial arts, along with nursing him back to health and testing him at every step. This portrayal was embraced by fans as a wonderful depiction by Liam Neeson.
Allow me to introduce myself. I am he who is called Ra's al Ghul.
His constant presence in DC animated series. It is no surprise that Ra's al Ghul has been in various DC animated series due to the sheer popularity and malleability of the character. He has been seen in multiple roles over the years with various different character arcs. Ra's al Ghul was voiced by David Warner in Batman the Animated Series. Talia al Ghul, Ra's daughter, informs him about Batman at the end of the episode Off Balance. This sets the tone for his subsequent appearances as the episode's antagonist. Ra's efforts in the comic to make Batman his successor and purge the world of humans are adapted in the two-part episode The Demon's Quest. After refusing to follow Ra's example, Batman devises a scheme to explode bombs in Lazarus pits all around the planet. When Ra's falls into one of the pits, he is presumed dead, but the ending reveals that he is alive. Ra's struggles to achieve genuine immortality are depicted in the episode Avatar. Despite the fact that Batman eventually apprehends Ra's, Talia frees her father and sends Batman on his way. After Ra's minions kidnap an elderly man from a retirement villa in the episode Showdown, Ra's leaves an audio tape for Batman and Robin. In 1883, Ra's and his son Arkady Duvall met and fought the character Jonah Hex. According to the recording, Ra's was compelled to abandon his son when Hex defeated Arkady. The old man, Ra's confesses, is his son, who he had gone after, serving a 50-year prison sentence. Because Arkady's mind and body were beyond the Lazarus Pit's ability to heal after 50 years, Batman let Ra's abduct Arkady so that the father and son could be reunited for a short time before Arkady's death. Ra's first debuted in the animated series Superman the Animated Series. Robin mentions him as a suspect Batgirl and Nightwing believe is responsible for Batman's abduction in the episode Nighttime. Ra's death is revealed in the episode The Demon Reborn. As Ra's age has progressed, the Lazarus Pit's ability to extend his life has waned, leaving him shriveled and confined to a wheelchair. In order to revitalize himself, he intends to suck Superman's life energy through a Native American relic. Talia begins the process of bringing Ra's back to life and making him more powerful than ever before, even though he has died. Ra's decides to save Talia over getting even more strength from Superman when Batman forces him to choose. But they both plunge into an underground river before their lair collapses. Ra's makes an appearance in Batman Beyond as well. Talia aided the original Batman in defeating Ra's during one final fight in the near apocalypse of 2009, before he retired. Ra's injuries were too severe for even the Lazarus Pit's healing abilities to cure after this combat. Ra's mind was transferred into Talia's body, using a gadget that could clone his memories and experiences onto a close genetic relative. Ra's pretends, as his daughter in the episode Out of the Past, to dupe Bruce Wayne into using the Lazarus Pit to resurrect himself, before imprisoning him in his mansion hideout. To get control of Wayne Enterprises, he plans to take over his nemesis's flesh and pretend to be Bruce and Talia's kid. However, the new Batman apprehends him, and once again, Ra's is beaten. Ra's al Ghul is voiced by Peter Woodward in Batman the Brave and the Bold. Instead of Batman or his own daughter, this version of Ra's wants to make Dick Grayson his heir. He makes appearances in episodes such as Sidekicks Assemble and The Siege of Starro as he plots his evil schemes. In the episode Crisis 22,300 Miles Above Earth, Ra's makes his final appearance, attempting to flood and purify the Earth by melting the polar ice caps. Batman, the Justice League International, and the Justice Society of America, with the help of Talia, foil his schemes and his army. After a struggle with Batman, Ra's is last seen falling into an abyss in the Himalayas. Ra's al Ghul is voiced by Oded Fehr in the Young Justice animated series. He is shown partnering up with other DC villains like Brain and Monsieur Mala in various nefarious schemes and shenanigans in this series. Ra's al Ghul is portrayed by Giancarlo Esposito in the film Son of Batman. Though it was not his intention, Slade Wilson's attack on Ra's sets his grandson Damian Wayne on the path to reuniting with his father Batman and assuming the identity of Robin. Lastly, Ra's al Ghul, played by Lance Reddick, makes an appearance in Beware the Batman. In this series, Lady Shiva brings Ra's back to life. He develops a gadget that will knock out Gotham City's electrical infrastructure, leaving the city in the dark. He succeeds in building the gadget and plunging Gotham into darkness, but only for a short while. By releasing the souls of Raish's adversaries from the magical weapon Raish wields, Batman defeats Raish. Raish is dragged into a bottomless pit by enraged spirits, likely to his death.
Well? Are you man enough to face your better?
What makes him so powerful? Raish has had centuries to gain and amass power, making him one of the most powerful Batman villains to ever exist. Raish has amassed enormous knowledge and talents that surpass those of Batman due to his long lifespan and superhuman longevity. Detective skills, chemistry, physics, military tactics, economics, and martial arts are among them, and he has mastered all of them, thanks to his photographic memory. Over the ages, he has amassed a vast network of worldwide relationships as well as a vast fortune. He prefers more antique weapons in combat, since he has had more time to learn them than more recent weapons. Scimitars, katanas, spears, staffs, bolos, shurikens, smoke pellets, and miniature explosives are among these weapons. He can communicate in Arabic, French, Greek, Latin, English, Spanish, Italian, German, Russian, Japanese, Mandarin, Urdu, and possibly more Indian languages. Raish has amassed a great fortune and many worldwide connections over the years. He is the undeniable leader of the League of Assassins, one of the world's most powerful and dangerous organizations, whose agents are eager to die for their master. He's also a skilled tactician, plotting his moves months, if not years, ahead of time. However, Raish's most powerful weapons are his green Lazarus pits, which cure any injury, including recent death, and restore the user to full health, but also inflicts temporary insanity, or sanity for those who are already insane, such as the Joker. His regular exposure to the pit has given him improved endurance, strength, and healing, but at the cost of a creeping onset of insanity if utilized excessively. Ra's al Ghul has been shown to have some knowledge of mysticism, in addition to his physical powers and resources. In order to ensure his survival, he has exhibited the capacity to transfer his soul into the bodies of others on multiple occasions, providing him with a means of surviving if his physical body is destroyed and unable to be put into a Lazarus pit. The specific mechanics of this technique have remained quite ambiguous. At times, it appears that a sophisticated ceremony is required to achieve this effect, while at other times, he can do this feat on the spur of the moment, simply by making physical contact with the chosen host. Raish developed immense magical powers after soaking in the Well of Sins, the first Lazarus pit, in the New 52. He claimed true immortality and demonstrated abilities such as levitation, energy projection, construct construction, and matter manipulation. Following his confrontation with Jason Todd, he lost these skills. Nevertheless, he is an immensely powerful villain, a deadly assassin with access to immortality. This is bound to make him a terrifying adversary. Ra's al Ghul has become a Batman mainstay ever since he debuted in 1971. And since then, he has had so many story arcs that we could make a whole series out of it. His adventures are vast, but in this video, we have tried to explore the ones that speak about his origins to give you, the viewer, a peek into what makes Ra's al Ghul who he is. Whether you see his comic book origin story or the one enacted in the Nolanverse, Raish has had to face the ultimate tragedy of losing one's wife. His origins humanize him, and once again, lay the foundation for a complex DC villain. What do you think about Ra's al Ghul? Let us know in the comments section below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like, and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.
I think you've had your workout for today.
Ah!